Good afternoon and welcome to the Indian Express. This is Premankur Biswas reporting from Ahmedabad. I'm at the office of Cinnamon Production House with film director producer Abhishek Jain. Abhishek Jain is a prominent face in the Gujarati film industry, primarily because of his 2012 film Kivit Jite Jayesh, which is seen as a pioneer of the urban Gujarati film genre. Abhishek, welcome to the Indian Express.
Thank you.
Abhishek, tell us about your first film, Kivirite Jayesh, which changed the face of Gujarati cinema in a lot of ways. It is considered to be a pioneer of a genre, and it is also seen as a film that revived the film industry. So, if you could tell us about that.
So actually, culturally speaking, I'm born and raised in Ahmedabad. So for me, my exposure has been the urban centers. And when it came to making a film in Gujarati language, we thought that we should make something that we relate to the most. And however, there were not many Gujarati films being released in multiplexes that we would, as youngsters, want to go and pay for. So there was the challenge that okay, you don't have an industry where you can really make the kind of films that you want to make, but then there is also a need gap because then there are not such films, and that's where I think the Gujarati plunges in, where there is something which is missing in the market. He gets in and he tries to fill that up. So I think that film, when we made, people really found a new dimension in Gujarati films, and they thronged. And believe me, the kind of word of mouth that Gujaratis can bring in, no one can really bring that in. And if there is something new, so Gujarati will lap it up. So that's how it really fared well.
Before that, what was Gujarati cinema was all about? I was talking to a few people, and they said it was generally about based in rural India, rural Gujarat, and not in keeping with what the modern day Gujaratis were thinking or could relate to.
So a slight difference in what their opinions are. They were based on the rustic milieu and the rural centers, but that's where the mass is still today. That's where the core Gujarati audience is, and their stories were quite relatable. And even today, if you watch on any of these films, though they might sound very redundant to you as an idea, but back then they were backed with social messages, and they used to create a good awareness. And there has been so many films which have created history in box office because of that kind of market. What we tried was tapping a new market or creating a new market rather than curbing on some other market. So the Gujarati cinema earlier was equally I would say vocal or equally active, and the audience base was equally big. Now it's only getting bigger and better.
The first Gujarati film was made in 1932, if I'm not
Correct.
mistaken, and it is a long, almost a century-long history. And though for us, the uninitiated, primarily because of our inability to grasp new things, we have heard of very few Gujarati films. Why do you think Gujarati films have not made that kind of noise outside the Gujarat market, apart from the few ones that got national award recognition, and of course the new one, the Cello Cinema, which
The Cello
got,
Show, yeah.
Cello Show, yeah. Which
No, so there have been Gujarati films, and you are right that there's not been a great amount of contribution when it comes to the national or international front. But I think it's an arc that Gujarati cinema, or a cycle that Gujarati cinema is going through. However, having said that, a lot of Gujaratis have been part of the films which has
Yeah.
brought a lot of galore to the Indian cinema internationally. So there is this constant conflict of Gujaratis being behind the camera or behind the scene of making of a film, or being in the forefront as creative personas in creating. So there has been this dwelling always. However, I think a couple of Gujarati literature that has got adapted into Gujarati cinemas has done really well. And obviously the recent India's entry to Oscar, or the nomination to, the entry to Oscar, Cello Show, has brought a lot of traction to Gujarati cinema, or the Gujarati language rather.
And but on the other side, from what I gather, Gujarati theatre has been flourishing. Part of it is based in Bombay too, but but even in Gujarat, it's been flourishing even in the last decades, over the years, right? So if you could tell us more about how the theatre here is different and about their success story.
So Gujaratis are primarily an entertainment-seeking janta, and they will work hard. And when by the time they come back home in the evening, they would want to get entertained equally. And they are also a very community thriving janta. So they won't sit, alone and watch something on their phone or go to a theatre alone. If a Gujarati family has to go, they will go in bundles. I have seen people coming to watch cinema or to watch theatre in huge amount, like 30 people booking tickets and going for it. So their celebration, their kind of entertainment seeking is this, and this has been an age-old tradition. And I think theatre is something that Gujaratis have related with the most, and there is a huge tradition of Gujarati theatre. However, having said that, the youngsters today have kind of cut down on going to Gujarati theatre per se. But a 45 plus audience still goes in the evening to watch Gujarati theatre and plays.
Has there been intermingling, like in the sense Gujarati plays being made into Gujarati?
Yeah. There has been.
And has it been a successful intermingling?
I would say a couple of films are made as if they are theatre plays.
Okay. So that is a different grammar.
There is a different grammar already.
Yeah. So, generally when, ironically, when you were talking about Gujarati families and stuff, you yourself belong to a Marwari Jain family. So, if you could tell us about, how this is a big community in Gujarat, I understand, how they're blended with the Gujarati community historically too, or whatever, how your family has blended with the Gujarati community.
So technically speaking, I mean, if you look at me and a Gujarati origin guy, you wouldn't find a difference. And it's just that I think the states have been divided and there are borders. Culturally, there is a slight difference, but culturally they are also so well blending, I mean, you step out in Ahmedabad and you go to a roadside dhaba, you will find dal bati and Kathiawadi food, both together in the same plate. You go to Rajasthan and you ask for some tikha khana and you will get almost a Kathiawadi food. So I think it's just the borders. Culturally, both the communities or both the people from both the states have blended really well. My father came in, he migrated from Rajasthan, and I am born and raised in Ahmedabad. I have the opportunity of looking at Gujaratis very objectively, and yet being a Gujarati. So it's my identity of convenience that I can be a Gujarati as well as not be a Gujarati and look at Gujarati.
So that helps you as a filmmaker?
Absolutely,
as a
that really helps me as a storyteller, because I look at the culture very objectively and then I tell the story as part of that culture.
And recently you made a film in Hindi, Hum Do Hamare Do, and after that, of course, in the last year or two post-pandemic, Bollywood has been in doldrums, if at all we can say that. And regional cinema, meanwhile, is shining, right? With, of course, the South films, even other regional cinema, Marathi and films from Assam. So I was wondering, do you think this is the right time for Gujarati cinema to grab its share of limelight too, make those films that will make...
Certainly, because I think it's not because Bollywood in doldrums is why we should shine. I think regional cinema has always got this opportunity of shining because they have got the great value for relatability when it comes to content. So if I'm looking at a screen where there is a magnum opus hero, on the other side a regional cinema is giving me a hero who's like in my neighborhood, so there is a sense of relatability and I get to see both kinds of films. So I think regional cinema has always been very dear to the audiences. It's just that it's about the fraternity and the filmmakers, whether they choose to make it in their language or not. And look at South, since last 70, 80 years, they have been continuously and consistently making films. What we should see today as part of RRR success or Pushpa success is actually not an overnight success. 20-25 years, they have constantly given us South Indian content dubbed in Indian Hindi language on channels. So we get attuned to their kind of grammar of storytelling, and now we see what they are what they are reaping out of it.
Do you think, and I say this because I come from Bengal, and there too this is a phenomenon, because most Gujaratis understand Hindi and like speak Hindi, they would always prefer watching a Bollywood film rather than a Gujarati film, because that it's better produced, the production qualities are better, and therefore Gujarati cinema has so far been in the shadows, because people would anyway understand Hindi, whereas in South, because they don't understand the language, that's a
Yeah,
major.
you got that really right, because Gujaratis are a prosperous community with a lot of aspiration. So they would always want to look out of the window and see what is there out in the market and grab that first. Having said that, Gujaratis are also the ones who will see someone in their own home, and if he's doing well, they'll put him on the shoulder and take it to the world. And there have been examples like that. So it's a very conflicting community or a culture where they want to aspire yet want to be stuck to their roots. They want to embrace their roots and also embrace the Western culture. I mean, there's nothing wrong in accepting anything or embracing anything. It's just that they are always swaying between the two, and that's the fun part of being a Gujarati.
Yeah, so exactly. So which is why I was wondering, maybe that might, if there's language pride, do you think that will bring in? Because I see a lot of language pride, because Gujaratis here seem to prefer to talk in Gujarati. So do you think the language pride factor will help the Gujarati film industry?
The language pride as well as the cultural pride factor should really, I mean, the pride about our own stereotypes can bring in a lot of audiences for Gujarati cinema.
And moving ahead, there's recently the Gujarat government launched this cinematic tourism policy, which is this ambitious project, which ambitious 1020 crores project, if I'm not mistaken, which will offer a lot of incentives to filmmakers to make films in Gujarat from outside. Also, local Gujarati filmmakers will get a lot of incentives. So, how do you think that will help? So, and also, earlier there were tax exemptions too. So, has that helped? If you could tell us about that.
So there are two different things coming from the tourism point of view. The cinematic tourism policy. This was constructed and made way back. It's just about the COVID that they couldn't really share it. I mean, 3 years back they were about to launch it, but because of COVID and all of that, we know what happened, and there were not many shoots happening and all that. Now they found the right time to launch it. But if you look into the policy and just look at the kind of offering that Gujarat has as location itself, it has got great terrains. You get, on one side you get the coastal area, which is the longest coastal area. On the other hand, you also get a hill station, you get barren lands of Kutch, you get forest areas of Saputara. So what not, actually if someone wants to really come and shoot an entire film here, can get the benefits. It's just about how the government supports it. And with that intention, the tourism policy has been brought in. So the locations are already there, the facilitation has been brought in. And I think this will bring in a lot of new kind of films. Like what has happened to UP over the period of time, the number of films being made in UP has flourished, and a lot of stories came from UP. It's not only using UP as a location, a lot of stories have come. So I am assuming that a lot of stories in the mainstream Bollywood will come from Gujarat. So their basis would be Gujarat, like how Jayesh Bhai Jordar has been. So that is one thing. And about the tax exemption, so earlier they were giving a subsidy on making a Gujarati film. Now they are not giving a subsidy, they are giving you they call it a protsahan policy. So encouragement policy. You make a Gujarati film, there is a set of people who will watch it within the committee, and these are committees of professionals who watch it, and they give you a certain mark, and according to that mark they give you encouragement by giving you a amount of rebate or whatever you may call it, however you want to call it. I don't call it a subsidy, because subsidy is that you subsidize from something. This is adding to something, so this is encouragement. So that is like a prize money rather than a subsidy amount.
Okay, so you think that will
that has really helped. But to any policy there are advantages and disadvantages, and there are people who are greedy towards it, and there are people who will take the right advantage of it. So we get to see both kinds of people.
What are the other things that the government can do to make the Gujarati film industry even better or make it even more successful?
I think whatever the government had to do, they have been doing in last 5-6 years. I've been part of the encouragement policy also when it was getting formed. I've also been part of the tourism policy, the cinematic tourism policy. I think I have not seen any government, and it's not about talking about a particular party. I'm talking about the people who are working with that intent in the offices. I have not seen people working with that great intent and doing research. So they have appointed people who would do research on various policies across the world about filmmaking or about cinematic tourism, and then try to find what could be the best possible thing that we can offer. So all of it that they could have done, they have done. It's now upon the fraternity and the people to really make more and more films. So I think as far as the encouragement policy is concerned, it's completely upon the fraternity now, because enough of encouragement has been given, enough of facilitation has been done. It is so easy to shoot today in Gujarat. Like if I want to shoot today, I can put my camera and start shooting, literally start shooting. And then I can call them up and say that I'm seeking a permission because it was so urgent that I had to shoot. And they'll still get it. So there is no problem as such. And having worked in Bombay, I know how painful can it be. So it's easy here. It's now about the fraternity to make films and really deliver some good stuff, so that they can be motivated enough to take this encouragement policy along.
So on December 5th, you will vote. And as a Gujarati voter, what are the things that you keep in mind while voting, and what will you vote on?
I just hope that people do a fair voting. I just hope that people, when they are voting, they do not really think about their own self or their family. They have to think about us as a community, as a state, as a country who is going to be looked by the world also. So there are so many factors. Voting can take probably a few seconds or a few minutes, but after that, the years that we are going to have with us is going to matter a lot. So one thing that I have constantly been trying to, or I have been conflicted with in my head, is on what parameters do you vote, because this country, or rather state or city or whatever, is so demographically, psychologically and physiologically divided that your need is different from my need is different from your need. Are we really voting for our needs, or are we voting for a conscious a bigger, larger conscience voting? So I think considering all of those factors, one can take time and then decide and then vote wisely. However, my personal belief has been that the cultural index of Gujarat is something that is a matter of concern. We all have been
By cultural index, you mean?
So I'm just coming to that. Financially, we are strong. There is everything that is possible in a state, is that be it infrastructure or everything. But when it comes to cultural index, what I mean is that the basic human values, the basic cultural values, the basic idea of sticking to your own culture roots. I'm not saying by culture being redundant, or I'm not saying being very stringent. I'm trying to say is that trying to understand what our roots are, what our culture is, and how can we add value to that. And the basic human values, like everything at the end of the day is about being a good human being, having a sense of good humanity and spreading that humanity amongst the society. That is something that now that we are, I would say, we are truth, we are satisfied, and we have got enough money, we have got enough things around us. I think it's time to take a leap and look into the cultural matters also.
Okay. On that note, let us just wrap up this wonderful conversation. And thank you, Abhishek. Thank you for taking time and speaking with the Indian Express. This is Premankur Biswas signing off from Ahmedabad. Thank you.
Thank you.